Hello guys, buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches. Welcome to our 14th video, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and before I move on to the topic of today, which should be pretty straightforward, I am going to mention that in case you haven't noticed, we only have 1 week left of classes, right? And I have noticed that many of you um, are sort of behind in your work, not only with this class, but also with other classes. Some of you have written to me letting me know that you're focusing on your other classes for now because some professors have given you a lot of work for this final push of the semester. And I totally understand that, right? There are some classes that are priorities, right? And there are some professors that have been less lenient than myself. So I have decided um, that it would be useful for everybody, including myself actually, to give ourselves a break in Spanish for this last stretch of the semester. So there will be only one more video after this one. That means you will have a little bit more time, right? But of course, please use this time to catch up, both in terms of this class and of all the other classes you need to complete for this semester. Okay? Um, so let's move on to the topic. As I said, it should be pretty straightforward. It's our last group of stem changing verbs. It's the E to I stem changing verbs, or E to E if you want to pronounce those vowels in Spanish, right? But I've noticed that some of you are still struggling a bit with the concept of what a stem changing verb is. So I'm going to do the same explanation that I've done for the last two videos, but I introduced an additional ingredient that I hope will make it clearer, okay? Will help you understand more clearly what I mean by a stem changing verb. So you already know that my standard example is cantar. What can I do? I love singing. Not in public, of course, because my voice is terrible, but I love singing, right? Let's conjugate this verb. So you know this by heart, I hope. The first thing we do is get rid of the last two letters of the infinitive, and what we're left with after we do this is the stem of the verb. This is very, very, very important, of course, right? The stem of the verb is whatever you're left with after you get rid of the last two letters of the infinitive. If you don't understand what the stem is, you will not understand what a stem changing verb is, right? So can't is the stem of this verb because it's left after we get rid of those last two letters. And then how do you conjugate it? Like this, right? You combine the stem with the endings for ar verbs, and that gives you all the forms of the verb, right? Now, let me emphasize the stem for a bit, and let's look exclusively at that part of the table that I highlighted in green. If you look at it carefully, you will notice that it's just can't over and over again. Why? Well, because cantar is a normal verb. It is not a stem changing verb. What does that mean? Well, basically, that the stem never changes in any of the forms of the verb, right? On the contrary, stem changing verbs, the verbs that belong to the three groups that we have done, the two groups that we have done and the one we're introducing today, those types of verbs do have changes in their stem, right? But it's absolutely necessary to understand what a normal verb in Spanish is and how the stem works before you move on to stem changing verbs. So I hope that this additional explanation will help clear the concept a bit for those of you who have been struggling. So now we can move on to talking about our last group of stem changing verbs. I will remind you yet again that stem changing verbs are those verbs that, unlike cantar, do have changes in their stem. But those changes are always minor. And very important rule, the golden rule, those changes always apply to all forms of the verb except nosotros, okay? So let's look at pedir. Pedir means to ask for or to request, right? As in pedir un favor, to ask for a favor. No? Pedir dinero, to ask for money. That kind of request, right? So how do you conjugate this? Well, you know the first step. You get rid of the last two letters. And what we're left with, ped, is the stem of the verb, right? If this were a normal verb like cantar, we would proceed to write ped everywhere because we would know that the stem does not change. But this is not a normal verb. It is an E to I stem changing verb. So the name of the group of stem changing verbs gives you the type of change that happens. This one says E to I. What does that mean? Well, quite basically, that the E that you have in the stem, in this case that E that you see between the P and the D, it changes to an I. Where? Well, let's look at the actual table. Here you have it. Again, let's highlight the stems. If you look at this table carefully, you will see that I don't have ped almost anywhere, right? Ped is the actual stem of the verb, but what I have almost everywhere is a form of the stem in which I change the E for an I. Why? Because this is a stem changing verb. But there is a place where I did not make the change. Nosotros. That's what I mean by the golden rule. Okay? The change of the stem applies everywhere but for nosotros. So that is what happens with the stems. Okay? What happens to the endings? Well, the verb is pedir. It means it ends in ir, which means that it's that type of verb. It's an ir verb. So I use the ir endings, which are right here. O, es, e, imos, en. So when I combine the stem with the changes called for by the golden rule with the endings called for by the ending of the infinitive, I get my conjugation. Yo pido, tú pides, él pide, nosotros pedimos, ustedes piden, ellos piden. Okay? Again, this is our last group of stem changing verbs. And it's the smallest one in terms of the quantity of words in the language. And it's a very interesting group as well because if you look carefully at the Spanish words here, you will see that all of them end in IR. All verbs that belong to the E to I stem changing verb group are ir verbs, which makes it a little easier because you know what endings to use, right? I'll pronounce them for you and I'll give you the meaning. Despedir means to say goodbye, as in yo me despido means I say goodbye. Gemir means to moan or to groan. Impedir means to impede or to prevent someone from doing something or something from happening, right? Medir means to measure. Pedir, which we just did, means to ask for or request. Reír means to laugh, a very important verb in Spanish and in all languages. Seguir means to follow. Servir means to serve. Sonreír means to smile. And vestir, yet another important verb, means to dress. Okay? For the activity, this time around just choose one verb, okay? Don't do two, just choose one. But it cannot be pedir, right? I don't want you to give me the same table all over again, right? Pick any verb from this list that is not pedir and conjugate it using the technique I just showed. And of course, making the correct change in the stem, in this case, E to I, okay? Thank you guys. And as I said at the beginning, we only have one video left in this class. I think I'm going to post it on Wednesday, right? And after next week, which is the last official week of classes, we have finals week. I hope you remember that there's no final for this class. The only exam we had was the midterm, right? And after finals week, which ends on the 22nd of May, I have 3 additional days for grading everything and posting grades, which means that the very last deadline I'm going to give you for submitting work for Spanish class is the 22nd of May. I need those 3 days, okay? If you give me something, if you send me something on the 23rd or the 24th, unfortunately, I will not be able to include it in your grade, okay? Now, some people have been sending me emails asking me, am I failing class? You're not, okay? You are not. If you are one of the students, of the vast majority of students that have kept in contact with me, even if you have sent me only a few activities, no, you're not failing the class, right? Don't worry, as long as I have your midterm, but I think I have them all except for one by now, right? So don't worry, don't freak out, okay? Just keep on sending activities, right? And take your time. Luckily, we have until the 22nd, right? Some people even have been sending me like batches of activities when they have like 30 or 40 minutes to burn. They go through a few videos and send me all the activities you can do. Yeah, whatever you want, right? Just make sure to submit everything before the 22nd, okay? Hasta luego. Nos vemos el miércoles entrante. Bye bye, guys. Stay strong.